All right, Chairman, we're live on YouTube.
Okay, welcome, senators.
We're here for House members.
Senate File 118. Just real quickly, Matt, just tell us where we're at with this and what the bill is about.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Matt Obrecht, LSO. So this bill, what it does is it appropriates federal funds that the state of Wyoming either has received or will receive for the COVID-19 pandemic relief. The bill was a Joint Appropriations Committee sponsored bill to begin with, and it underwent some substantial modifications within the House Standing Committee to essentially create a substitute bill that included House Bill 263 within this bill as well. So, Mr. Chairman, you want me to walk through this?
So I think the House is quite familiar with the first half of it. That's all of the Senate file. So I don't think you have any issues on that. Is that fair to say, Mr.
Right.
Coach?
I think, ultimately, sections 1, 2, and 3 were pretty much in the files that left the Senate. Although I think you guys tweaked section 3 a little bit, mostly about I think on the expiration of these amounts. When these expire, you have that 90 days after the upon the later the expiration of the program under relevant federal law or upon expiration of any extension granted for use of the funds and the program by the Treasury. Then you have some monthly reporting in there on page 6. So, but other than that, I think it's relatively unchanged.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And then with regards to the second half, why don't you just walk through in a nutshell what those do?
Mr. Chairman.
Section 4 is just findings. Go ahead, Senator Hicks.
Yeah, real quick, Representative Nicholas. I'm curious if we go to section 3 and you go down to the very bottom, why we halt that at December 1st, 2020. And that's just the report on how the funds are being expended. I know JAC will be back in the week after that. I'm assuming that's the rationale for the December 1st. But that'll be agency hearings. I just was wondering if we wanted to carry that over into January 2022, so we'd have the latest expenditures before budget markup.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. The thought was on the House side, making that December 1, if it's CARES dollars that have to be expended by the end of the year, we wanted a report to know how much was available for expenditure before the end of the year in case we wanted to encourage an expenditure or someplace that may have been left out. And so that's why we chose December 1 to give us 30 days before the end of the, or before the expiration on the CARES dollars. Now that's different than the ARPA dollars that would expire a couple years later, but that's the purpose for that thought right there.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that explanation, Representative Walters. But they provide a monthly report. So the way that's on May 1st and then on the first day of each month thereafter, including December 1st. So we would get one December 1st anyway.
That's true.
That will be the final report then, the way it's structured. Do we want to carry that into January? That was the only question.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, and I think keep in mind that section 3 only deals with approximately $18 million of money that was encumbered but unexpended. And so it's a lesser amount. Certainly, if you remember, the governor was awfully good and LSO working with them always gave us pretty good numbers. The hope was, or in talking as I visited with the governor's office multiple times in developing section 3, the thought and the hope is this stuff will all be expended before the summer, by late summer. But it could pale over, but the anticipation is this stuff was all pretty short fused and it'll all happen pretty quickly. But who knows?
And I don't want to get hung up on it. It was just a question. So, and hopefully it is all spent before then. So,
Well, and I suppose we would need a little clarification, because if you go on to page 6, paragraph, line 6C, we talk about additional CARES Act. That my recollection was that it wasn't just the 18 million that we were trying to address. We were trying to, that's also whatever happens in a special session, because some of those dollars for the CARES Act carries over for another year. Not all of them, but certain portions of them. But I may be mixed up. So,
Well, Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
so if you look at page 16, and my thought was, and maybe you can help us, Matt, but my thought was, we're going through this, I thought that A was the appropriation for out of the continuing resolution for the rental relief and utility assistance. Then B was the unexpended unencumbered funds, which were under section 2, and then C is the 18 million under section 3. So if you look at lines 1 through 4, section 3 is only about that 18 million. But I guess I guess we are authorizing the governor later on to transfer additional money in there if he wants to do so.
Go ahead, Matt.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's right. If we look at section 6, which is the appropriation section, starting on page 14, A is the 220 million that we get for the rental assistance program. That's that appropriation. B is the 20 million of existing CARES Act funds for those applications that were approved prior to December 30, 2020, but there weren't any money expended under those appropriations. And then subsection C on the top of page 16 is the 18 million for those restarted programs under the CARES Act in section 3 of the act. And then the D on the top of page 17, this is the big blanket appropriation here of all ARPA funds and all ARPA funds the state will get. I mean, and this is for the state share of a little over $1 million, the CapCon of a little over 100 million, all of the education money it's all appropriated in subsection D here. And also what's appropriated in subsection D is the remainder of the CARES Act money that's not appropriated otherwise in other places in the bill. So in that 20 million or in that 18 million. And then that tie into D is the governor can expend the ARPA funds. That appropriation is immediately, but he cannot set up programs to expend it under section 5 until September 1. So he can expend it to preserve federal funds, to supplement existing programs, and also to address an emergency, but he couldn't set up a program in which to expend those funds, or anything else that doesn't have an appropriation for it.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, so Matt, just expanding on that last thought just a little bit. We know about the 18 approximately. We know about the 20 approximately. What we don't know about yet is we had talked with the governor, and at one point he was thinking about putting about $39 million in the UI fund. And then as joint appropriations and the Department of Workforce Services looked at that, we didn't get a lot of bang for our buck like we did with the 25 million that he put in back in September. And so he was thinking about not doing that. Then the other one we have is we're getting somewhere between $0 and $110 million in FEMA reimbursements. From money that was to replace the general fund that was expended during the pandemic that FEMA might reimburse us for. And so where are those also going to be captured under kind of the big super appropriation in F or D?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that you are exactly right. All other CARES Act funds, anything that we get clawback, tailings, anything that the FEMA we're able to get reimbursement for FEMA or any other existing CARES Act funds will be appropriated under D for the governor to be able to expend in any statutory authority he already has or what we give him in Section 5. But again, won't be able to stand up any of those programs until September 1 under this bill.
Except for Section 2 and Section 3.
Right.
And Section 1.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Okay, then.
Matt, the September 1 date is not in Section 5. That's in Section 3, I think, or Section 4, the September 1 date. Correct. Section 4, Romanet 6.
So
That's where the September 1 date is.
So Mr. Chairman and Senator Kinski, if you go to page 19, Section 9, that's the effective date portion. A says, except as provided in this subsection, this act is effective immediately. But subsection B says Section 5 of this act is not effective until September 1, 2021.
Okay.
Well,
And then, so how does that differ from the September 1 date that's in Section 4?
there you go.
So Section 4 is simply the findings of fact of the legislature. We're just laying out our blueprint there of what we want to do. And so we say that, I think you're talking about page 8 in paragraph 6, top of page 8, that says, in the event for whatever reason the legislature does not enact further legislation to appropriate federal funds from ARPA or CARES by September 1, 2021, then the governor is authorized by the terms of this act to implement programs as specified to expend these funds.
So that's not actually an authorization, that's just a finding.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, so is anybody, I think, so I'm clear on sections 1 through 5, or I guess 1 through 4. So in Section 5, which was, we kind of started the House appropriations in your work when the bill came over there, you guys knew a lot more about ARPA by the time it got to you than we did. And so you put that knowledge to work in Section 5. Can you take us through Section 5 and obviously we've read it, but tell us if you can take us through Section 5, Bob or Matt, and help us just kind of take us through that. We've kind of got the wish list, and then it's also, it was amended then when it got to your floor, it was amended once to add one additional item to a wish list. So why don't you take us through that?
So to make it easy, I don't know if you guys have this in front of you, but this is the ARP Act that was passed out, the handout. You'll see that about 3/4 of those items listed are taken directly from this handout. So basically we're using the statutory language from the Act of Congress, and so the bullet points come from this list. So I can walk you through them. The first one just talks about, that's paragraph B, page 9. That's just implementing both the ARP and the CARES Act. And then if you go down to Romanet I, that's language, pre-existing language from our work in May of 2020. So we're on the COVID CARES Act dollars. If you go to Romanet 2 on page 10, that comes directly out of paragraph A in this handout, subsection A, state permissible purposes. So we're just listing those purposes in Romanet A. Our Romanet 3,
Hang on a minute. Romanet A, page what of the handout, Matt? I mean, Bob.
I think he means Romanet 2, but yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry, Romanet 2 is, these aren't paginated, but it's just the state permissible.
State
uses.
permissible purposes, slide 3.
Section A, right, slide 3. Then the next one, Romanet 3, is paragraph B, for also in state permissible purposes, slide 4. And then
And that comes in under which Romanet?
3, Romanet 3.
Respond to workers. Okay, there we go. Gotcha.
All right, and then Romanet 4 is paragraph C, state permissible purposes again, slide 5. Then you go on to page 11, that's paragraph D, which is slide 6. We tweaked that a little bit, you can see a bit different. We just made it a little more encompassing. And then Romanet 6, that's prior CARES language. And then we added some language to that, which are the building delays. We know that those are covered under the CARES Act original obligations. If you go down to Romanet 7, that's just to use these funds for the Wyoming Life Resource Center and the state hospital on the capital construction component of it and the delays caused by COVID. So we're just identifying it for specifics. Romanet 8, that's also ARP language. I believe, I'm not sure which one it is, but it comes directly from ARP, as does Romanet 9 and 10. Romanet 11 is CARES Act, COVID-19 pandemic, business relief programs, and that also came from our May 20 legislation. And the same with Romanet 12. Yeah, and so that's just a catch-all for anything that federal law allows us to do.
So I thought Matt was slaving over this language, and it turns out he was just plagiarizing.
Well, Matt was doing what we told him to do. And D, I think that's also language from the act as well. Isn't that right, Matt?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that was from our 2020 special session law. We just wanted to kind of try to limit double dipping from private entities.
Right, exactly.
I don't know how successful.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
on D, then what we're trying to do is just, if they've gotten this through other, before they apply for this, if there's some other kind of federal program or even a state program available for the relief that they seek, we're trying to get them to do that before they come here. That's the way I read D. Is that correct?
That's correct. We just, if they got PPP dollars, some other thing, or, certain education dollars, certain specific dollars that went out there, we want to know what they received, because in the end of the day, we're going to be taking the money and distributing it to the most in need, theoretically, or maybe who hasn't had it yet. Or at least we want to have that information when we make that type of a determination.
Oh, so it's not a full prohibition, but it provides a preference, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and it doesn't really necessarily provide a preference. We just want to know what they received so we can have the most information in front of us when we make decisions.
All right, or at least when the executive makes the award. Yeah. Okay.
And section 6, that's just the rental assistance program. That's pretty simple.
Yeah, those are just so six is just the appropriations for each of the other sections.
Right. So that takes us through, I think, Mr. Co-Chair, you had a question on E on the top of page 18.
Yeah, on E, help us, yeah, so you've got this, so we've got this and the 15,000, you've kind of given the governor a ticket for 15 million, excuse me, out of the legislative stabilization reserve account. And I confirmed with Matt this morning that really there's no other place. We don't really have another place if the governor needed to adjust a expenditure to avoid running afoul of a maintenance of effort or maintenance of equity type of standard, that this would give them that. He doesn't have the ability to invade the statutory reserve account. He does not have the ability to, it's going to be difficult to be 11 from many other places. But anyway, but you might take us through your thoughts on this 15, help us understand your rationale.
And when we came up with this figure, the 15 million, that's before there were substantial amendments on the step 2 and step 3. And so it was anticipating that, the full impact would have happened to UW and the community colleges, for example. And we were right on the cusp or the border of being underneath. You recall, that's why we put money back. So
Right.
by putting money back, that this 15 million is probably too high. I met with Don Richards and I said, well, what's a safe number for both the higher education and health? Health was the other component, once again, on the step 3 cuts. Because we put back a significant amount of the step 3 cuts, he doesn't believe we're at risk like we were before. So he suggested a couple million for each one would be sufficient. So if we want to put this number down to 5 or 4 million, whatever it is, he says we'd be safe doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
what's your thoughts on the fact that we're going to be back in July to address that issue? Is it anticipated by the time we get this out and we get the rules and these programs start to run out that something's going to happen before July when we're back in a special session that this money would be needed? And I don't mind a small safety amount, but I'm just curious as your thoughts on the timing.
So thanks for the question, Larry. My thought is that even after we take our action, we might have to add to it versus subtract from it. It just depends on how much we're going to allocate and where. And we won't know that until the end of that special session. But to me, even if we understand what the definition of maintenance of effort is by July, say, 15th, there are still rules and modification of those rules that happened last time that happened about every month. We get a new or reinterpretation of some certain components of the CARES Act. And so I think we need to have some reserve there. We could just eliminate it in the special session as well if we have that comfort zone. But at this point, since we don't know anything, we just thought it would behoove us to have something in there to protect us.
So you're thinking 2 million for higher education, 2 million for Department of Health?
That's correct. And really, it's just 4 million, and so he has to cover both ends.
So
We don't have to designate anything in particular. It's all maintenance of effort. That way, it doesn't get locked up in one box.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
and so anyway, I thank you for that explanation. I think that helps. The other thing I would ask you about is going back again to section 5 and the laundry list of different things this can be expended for. You took us through the slide deck on ARPA, and appreciate that. As I kind of look at the overall condition of that, ultimately we'll be back and we'll have the opportunity as a legislature, assuming that we do have the special session. It's anticipated, obviously, that we will. But assuming that we do have that we'll be back and be able to put additional or add additional or eliminate or put additional, or add some sideboards or fill out some of these programs that were authorized. However, in the event that we didn't address those, that after September the 1st, the governor would then be authorized to go down and using his discretion, either fund or not fund any of the projects in the list that we provided in section 5. Is that how you view that?
Yeah, that is how I view it, so long as he's in compliance with the treasury rules.
Yeah, okay. And then the only amendment, you guys went on the floor, looked like you guys battled a little bit on the floor. There was probably 7 or 8 amendments, but only a couple of them were adopted, I think, unless I may have this confused with a different bill. But ultimately then you on third reading, I think, brought this other list that about endowments for healthcare and work, endowments for healthcare and basically work retraining.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Yeah, real quick there, Bob, what's your thoughts? Because you said providing funding and endowments for training. So just clarify for me the difference between funding and endowments. What are you thinking?
Well, the question is, and we don't know till we see the treasury rules, but let's say that we wanted to solve the education crisis with these dollars. Could we take 300 million of the 1 billion and put it in, just deposit it into the Common Schools Permanent Fund? Or if we wanted to create, say, a PA college, and so, or positions to fund PAs, 20 positions similar that we have for physicians. The question is, if we can use the dollars for such a thing, then at least we can have that discussion. But once again, honestly, when we come back into special session, we'll do what the heck we want to do. These are just kind of general parameters and thought-provoking statements that try to match the language that's in the ARP Act. And so, I mean, who knows what the best uses for those dollars are? We all have our own opinions on it. So I think we just tried to open up the discussion a little broader than it was.
Yeah, and I think if it's eligible, we may certainly want to look at dumping something into a corpus or setting up an endowment where we can pull the interest off of it. Just the way I read the wording on here, that endowment would only be eligible for training healthcare professionals or workforce training.
I think it's read not as an only, it was an alternative, such as, is my recollection.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's to provide funding endowments for training healthcare professionals in workforce training programs. So
yeah,
it's as open as you can make it almost.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So how would you like to proceed, Mr. Co-Chair?
Let me ask, is it possible for us to do just a really quick breakout with our Senate members? Is that possible, Matt?
We'd be happy just to leave the room if you make it easier.
It might be. I don't know that.
You're on
this is
YouTube.
that
I'm
different.
sorry, you can't do that.
Well,
Mr. Chairman,
I could send.
I think Amanda can create a breakout room for you.
Amanda, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, let me get a breakout room created for the senators.
Okay.
Thank you, Amanda.
So, Bob, how many people do you have in the House on the floor?
40. There were
40.
earlier today. So 2/3.
There we go. We'll see you guys in a minute.
Yeah, how about you? Yeah. Yeah, I got a lot of stuff. Yeah, Amanda, have you got this room, the microphones off?
Matt, the mics are working in the room. We just need to make sure that they're off when you're not speaking.
Very good, thank you.
So Bob, are you still there?
Yep, still here.
Okay. You know, we visited really quick. I think you guys did some pretty good work on this bill. If we put the 15 back to 4, and whether you leave it 4 or 2 and 2, I don't know that we have a particular preference. Governor's shown that he's pretty adept at watching these things and making sure we don't step on our necktie too badly. So, but other than that, I think we can make that amendment. I think we're probably pretty good to go on the bill.
Okay. Sounds good with us. We'll have,
Do you want to do 2 and 2, or just want to do the 4 and the governor can put it wherever he needs to? I'd just soon give him the flexibility, I think.
yeah, I would prefer having the maximum flexibility with the dollars if he needs it.
Getting a thumb up from the vice president, and Senator Kinski's watching. I don't know what yeah, he's getting a thumbs up too. He is watching. Okay.
Okay, we'll have Matt put it together and we'll get it circulated.
Okay.
So you guys, I take it you do email signatures, is that right, for the 3 signatures?
Yeah, we got to figure that out. We did it during the special session. So I think we've got
So,
that.
I somehow when I get a PDF, at least it's from Kathy Barrett, I can do a secure electronic signature.
Yeah.
Maybe she's got some capability the rest of you don't have, but I can do it on a PDF generally.
Yeah, and I think with these, as long as we have one different color, you can scan and send it. It's not as important as a.
Well,
Yeah.
earlier I did one where I just talked to LSO staff and go ahead and told them to sign for me and initial it. So,
Yeah.
Well, that's easy. Your signature is just that X anyway, so
two X's.
two X's, all right.
Well,
Gentlemen, thank you.
that's a beverage preference, I think, but maybe not. I don't know.
All it's made with barley, I'm good with that.
Oh, pork
All right,
chop
Tom.
in every can. I'll watch
Thanks.
for the PDF. I'll sign it and scan it back.
All right, take care. We'll talk to you all. of you
Thanks, you guys.
All right.